Everybody, it's Craig and Arun back with your Week 9 Saturday college football slate of games for you. We're going to do all this in around an hour. It's Saturday, October 25th games we're looking at for college football, of course. We've got a couple specials for you before we get to the free picks. Don't forget, if you want to get in on our top plays, you can get that 2-for-1 Craig and Arun special. It's exclusively new this week. Only way to get it is at this link. You get both of our football plays for the week for $99. It's usually $99. People said, hey, we hate having to go buy both or choose which one. So we made it easy for you. 2-for-1, DocSports.com/Craig Arun. Plays will be out on Thursday, so get in on it early so that way you get the early lines and you won't regret it as we continue to provide the winners for you. That's 6 from IC every week, including his top play will be included in there. 8 plays from me for this week, including 2 top plays. So make sure you get in on just the top plays alone would cost you $90 if you bought them individually. All right, let's get to college football for the week. Don't forget, also, if you want, the timestamps are below. I don't think we really mentioned that. So timestamps are below. So if there's a game you're looking for, you can just go to the description and hit the time it is, and it'll go right to that point of the video. All right, SMU at Wake Forest here in the ACC, kicking us off here for Week 9. SMU favored by 3.5, total 53.5. What do you like here?
Well, obviously, this kicks us off on Saturday, right? So I'll tell you this: SMU, they're 5-2, and Wake is 4-2. SMU, of course, I mean, we knew they were going to get up against Clemson. It was almost entirely predictable that this team was going to sort of stink a little bit, and then when they faced Clemson, they were going to show up. And they continue to get up for this Clemson team over and over again. Here's the thing: I like the fact that SMU comes off that big win against Clemson. They beat Stanford, which I think is a pretty big win. They also beat Syracuse as well. And then the last time that these two teams met, never, Craig. So then you have a Wake Forest team that comes off a huge win against Oregon State, big win against Virginia Tech. They could be turning the corner here. I'll tell you this, they are impressive to the tune that they did only lose to Georgia Tech by 1. I mean, that matters, right? So I'm trying not to take totals, and you know why? I've been irritated because I was perfect 2-0 in the NBA, and I gave 2 totals instead of giving sides. But I will tell you this. I think Wake Forest, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm a huge SMU backer. I think SMU is a good team, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll tell you this: the fact that Wake Forest, comes off back-to-back wins and they lost their last 2 home games, if you will, to Georgia Tech and NC State, I think the plus 3.5 is going to be significant, man. I think everybody's going to be jumping on SMU, which they are. And I think this is a great opportunity here for Wake Forest to do well. I mean, how does SMU respond to such a monster win against Clemson? I just don't think they'll respond that great. And, I thought one of the most impressive wins that Wake Forest had was that win against Stanford, right? So you have, that win against Virginia Tech 30-23 because they went on the road and they were up 24-14, Craig. They were demolishing Virginia Tech in a game that Virginia Tech sort of needed. So put it all together. I'm going to take the plus 3.5 here, surprisingly. And it might even be by plus 4 by game time. All right, Craig, Syracuse here hooks up against the aforementioned Georgia Tech. Syracuse is a plus 18-point dog. And Georgia Tech now, Craig, it has been just ending up in those rankings. I read a crazy story about Haynes King sleeping at the Georgia Tech Stadium. And that's just, he's just sleeping there. He's just living out of there, going to class there. Georgia Tech is ranked 7th in the country now. They are still undefeated. They're an 18-point chalk here. Syracuse comes off that 13-30 loss against Pittsburgh, and Georgia Tech, of course, beating Duke 27-18. Who do you like here?
I think it's a little bit of a lookover spot. Remember, next week they have a bye. Georgia Tech does. So I always say going into a bye is much tougher to because these kids are like, man, we're going to get a few days off. It's a grind, not just for the NFL that we talk about, for college football as well. I think you take the points here with Syracuse. I do think Georgia Tech dominates. I just think this offense with King, his run and pass ability, it's just too much for Syracuse as far as them to win. But can they cover the big number? I think so. I think it's a little lookover spot. I think Georgia Tech would just be happy to put it in neutral late in this one, and I think Syracuse can get us a backdoor cover late. Syracuse plus 18. Next game, Virginia, North Carolina. North Carolina looked a lot better in that Cal loss last week. Should have won. Guy fumbled going into the end zone. I mean, literally on the half-yard line. Virginia's been great, 6-1 on the year. Virginia's favored by 10.5, total 51.5. Can North Carolina do it again?
I think so. Because, I like the fact that Virginia does come in ranked pretty high, right? They're ranked 16. They're on the outside looking into that top 12, and they might as well get there. There's a pretty decent chance they might even sneak inside there, especially with Missouri playing Vanderbilt coming up as well, and Texas Tech and Oklahoma having some big games on deck too. So, Virginia understands how important this game is. Virginia played like dog poop against Washington State, though. They were 15.5-point chalk, and they had to come back with 12 points in the fourth quarter because I think maybe they were looking ahead to this game. So bear in mind that you had a quarterback for Virginia that, threw for 179, Morris, but no touchdowns, no interceptions. North Carolina, they played great against Cal. I mean, that was one of the things that we called in this game, and they certainly covered against Cal. Obviously they lost to Clemson and they lost to UCF, but those losses look pretty good right now in the sense that, it's going to take some time. When Nick Saban is talking about Belichick on college game days, like you got to give him a chance. So it looks like he's not going to go anywhere. It looks like UNC is going to remain with him. I will tell you this: UNC beat him 41-14 last year. I think what probably happens here is that Virginia played so bad last week. I can't imagine them playing this bad this week. I just can't. And at the same time, UNC comes off of a decent effort. This won't be on my card, but if I had to take a side here, I'm going to take Virginia. I just don't think Virginia plays as bad as they did previous week. I think that kind of woke them up a little bit. And I'm going to back Virginia here minus the 10.5. Craig, UCLA, 25-point dog here against Indiana. UCLA, of course, is a resurgent team now, winning against Maryland, Michigan State, and Penn State. All of a sudden now, a team that looked terrible now is 3-4 and looks like they're going bowling if they can pull off a couple more wins. But what do you think happens here? Lions at 25. Public is on UCLA, but that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything at all. What do you think?
We're early in the week, too, like on those public numbers. So those definitely shift as the week. So, most of the bets come in, within 24 hours. So I like UCLA again. It's 25 points. Are they better than Michigan State? Michigan State kept it within 25 last week. They are clearly, especially right now, the way they played the last three games, they're way better. And it would have been an easy spot for UCLA to look over last week because they had, Indiana, Indiana they knew probably was going to win. Indiana's going to be a top 3 or 4 team they were going to be facing. They didn't do so. That showed a little maturity for this young. And the way Neuheisel's calling him, offensive coordinator here for UCLA, I mean, it's like his dad, what he did when he was kind of came storming on the scene as his great offensive mind. I like him this week. I think they keep it within, 20, 18 in that range. I think Indiana's just they're loaded. The Mendoza kid is for real. I think he has a real chance to win the Heisman, depending on obviously what some other players do. But let's take the points here with UCLA. I think it's a pretty solid number here, and I'd probably wait till game time. I think we might even get 25.5 in this one.
I'll be honest. I was shocked when I saw the total at 55.5. I thought the total could be at like 65 or 70.
The one thing I worry about when you see, I think it might go under because Indiana might be up late big and just like cruising. Like they don't need. It used to be that Indiana would need like to run it up. You know what I mean? To get some style points. They don't need to anymore. That win at Oregon, all they got to do is just keep winning. If they keep winning, they're going to end up being a top 2 team when it all comes said and done. Next game, Ole Miss at Oklahoma here. Oklahoma, I keep waiting. I mean, after the Texas loss, I kind of thought maybe their season would go. I don't know. This is a big game. These are both 6-1 teams, kind of an eliminator potentially for the college football playoffs. Oklahoma's favored by 4.5 against Ole Miss, total 54.5. What do you like here? Noon kickoff.
So Ole Miss beat them 26-14 last year, right? And I was a little surprised to see the line here. I thought Ole Miss would be a little bit more, not a 4.5-point dog coming in. And Ole Miss could just be hung over from this Georgia loss. And this is crazy. I think what college football did right is this. And remember, they've been tweaking. And they got this 12-team playoff right. Because every team still feels like they have a chance. It creates an incredible amount of excitement and viewership, all of that stuff. I think they got it right. I know a lot of coaches have gotten fired now. But at the same time, I think it takes a lot less stress on the top coaches, maybe a little bit, because they each have a chance to maybe kind of sneak in. But at the same time, so many coaches are getting fired left and right. But I think this 12-team playoff is great for the fan, right? And it's created a lot of excitement. Ole Miss, and I'm a huge Lane Kiffin fan. Getting outscored 17-0 in the fourth quarter has got to hurt, right? This is an Ole Miss team that only rushed for 88 yards, and Georgia was able to run on them, 221 yards. And that is why Ole Miss is a dog today. If Georgia can run for 221 on them, imagine what an Oklahoma team might do who loves to run the ball, right? When Oklahoma last played South Carolina last week, they put up 171 rushing yards, 148 passing yards. So this is a bad matchup more than anything for Ole Miss. Ole Miss does come off of a loss. It's been a long time since Ole Miss lost, Craig. Last time Ole Miss lost was 17-24 against Florida back on November 23rd. It's been almost 1 year since Ole Miss lost. So keep that in mind too. But Oklahoma comes in off of a nice win. They did lose to Texas 6-23. A little surprised here at the line though. I kind of want to be flaky and take a total here. But at the same time, I'm trying my best to stick to sides right now. I will tell you this: taking Lane Kiffin off of a loss is pretty decent, you know. And I know the line is -4.5 Oklahoma, and I know why the line is -4.5 because they are a rushing juggernaut. They did beat Michigan at home 24-13. These are the type of games that they do pretty well. But I got to tell you something. Ole Miss off of a loss, I think, is a pretty decent proposition. And I'm going to back my boy here, Lane. I'm going to take the 4.5. Even though the public is riding Ole Miss to a tune of 60%, I'm still going to take the 4.5. I still feel like it's a little bit of a trap, but I still want to take Ole Miss off of that loss. Craig, Ohio here hooking up against Eastern Michigan. Ohio coming in as a 12.5-point chalk. On a total of 59.5, pretty high total. Ohio off that nice win against NIU, and Eastern Michigan coming off that loss against Miami of Ohio, 30-44. I will tell you that last year Ohio beat them 35-10. Who do you like?
OU's 0-3 on the road. Now, granted, a couple of them, one was against the Ohio State, so big brother there for them. The other one was at Rutgers early in the year. I don't know. To me, this is one of those teams that scares me being on the road. I do think OU still is top 3 team in the MAC. They have yet to prove it. That loss at Ball State kind of sticks in my thing. So I'm taking a side or a total here instead. This EMU team hasn't been able to stop anybody. 2 of the last 3 games they've given up ridiculous numbers. Navarra for Ohio can really dual threat. I think he has a big game. I think this game goes way over here. So let's take the over in this Ohio and EMU game. Totals 59.5 as we record this. Next game, another noon game, Rutgers at Purdue. Purdue, I really thought Odom would be able to kind of surprise some people last week. Not so much. Rutgers favored by 2.5, total 59. What do you like here?
You know, Rutgers, oh man, the mighty Big Ten, if you will, coming off big losses to Oregon and Washington and Minnesota and Iowa. I mean, it's just brutal in college football right now. If you want to be a college football head coach, you might want to just stay sometimes in these smaller conferences because when you get up to the big boys, it is really, really hard. It is really a coin flip on many of these games. You have a Purdue team here, and who comes off a loss to Northwestern, 0-19. I thought they played pretty well against Illinois, to be, and I thought they put up some points against Notre Dame. Putting up 30 against Notre Dame is not easy to do, and these 2 teams haven't met since 2020. Rutgers does come in as a -2.5-point chalk. I really like the over here, Craig. And I know this total is high, but I want you to know that Rutgers put up 10 points and 19 points the last 2 weeks, right? Purdue also put up no points in their last game against Northwestern. I could easily see this game going over the posted total. I could see both these teams just really, really angry. Lots of anger between these 2 teams. The last time Rutgers is used to facing, they had a 62 and a 62 total posted on them the last 2 weeks. And Purdue typically is usually like at the most, low, I would say mid-50s. So this is a pretty high total. So I like the over here between Rutgers and Purdue. Craig, Bowling Green State here, hooking up against Kent State here on a total of 48. Bowling Green State, of course, coming in losing to Central Michigan 6-27, and Kent State losing to Toledo 10-45. Bowling Green did beat them 27-6 last year. Who do you like?
Well, we had warned you last week that Bowling Green was in a huge letdown spot after upsetting their rival Toledo the week before. And then we said, probably going to be a big letdown. It's not a team that's experienced a lot of, especially with new coach Eddie George, hadn't experienced those highs. And they had a letdown. This week, they bounced back. This is going to be the typical coach thing where you go in and say, look what happens when we don't play our hardest, when we don't focus. And they're going to be focused against a bad team this week. I think it's a huge bounce back spot. This might even make my card. Potentially, it's going to be that one of those outliers. Bowling Green, -7. I think they lay the wood. Battle of Kansas next here, I see for you. Noon game again. Kansas is hosted in Kansas State. Kansas State kind of needs this. If you kind of look at their schedule ahead, they could end up not bowl eligible potentially. Kansas favored by 3, total 56.5. What do you like?
Yeah, I mean, look, we expected more out of Kansas State this year.
Yep.
I think everybody did. And they're 3-4 out of the gates, and Kansas is 4-3. I will tell you that Kansas has won this game the last 10 plus years. You got to go back even past 2015 before Kansas won one of these games. Kansas State coming off a big win against TCU. Maybe they're turning the corner, lost by 1 to Baylor, did beat UCF by 14, which I thought was pretty impressive. So maybe they are turning the corner a little bit here. I think what you're probably going to see is a Kansas team, of course, that comes off a bad loss to Texas Tech, 17-42. They very well could bounce back coming off their worst loss probably of the year. Maybe they're looking ahead to this game as well. But Kansas State is also playing really, really well right now, too. But I got to tell you something. I got to be impressed with the team in Kansas who has all this massive revenge coming in. I got to be impressed with the fact that Kansas, did not put up a point in their last game in the second half against Texas Tech. They were down 17-21 before Texas Tech sort of ran the gamut on them in the second half. And I think they're going to be really upset coming into this game. They only rushed for 47 yards last game. There's a lot of motivation here for this Kansas team. I'm going to back Kansas -3. Craig, South Florida -5 here on the road against Memphis. This is a monster game here. South Florida is ranked 18th in the country, and Memphis is outside the top 25 now. South Florida 6-1, Memphis is 6-1. The difference is that Memphis, of course, comes off its first loss of the year against UAB, where they were 24-point favorites. So they were going to be pretty upset coming into this game. South Florida has a lot to look forward to. They're still ranked 18th in the country. And if they can win this game and then beat UTSA, Navy, and then they face this UAB team, they could sneak inside the number depending on how many dominoes fall. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, either team I think wins out. I think could end up in the team outside of the Power Four that ends up in the college football playoff, especially if it's South Florida. I think we told you last week, be careful. These teams are going to be looking towards this game. Memphis, I did not think they'd lose to UAB. But what a win by UAB last week after you find your coach, you beat a Memphis team looking ahead. I think Memphis is not going to be obviously looking past this one. I think you're going to get their best effort. I think you take the over in Memphis in this one. Of the stronger, definitely taking the total. Memphis can't stop people. They're going to give up points. South Florida, we've seen that they can struggle. Early in that North Texas game, they couldn't stop North Texas. I think Memphis offense is way more potent. So I'm going to take the over in this one. I know it's high, but it's high for a reason. Take the over 64. Next game, Appalachian State at ODU. ODU, man, they were flying high, and all of a sudden a couple losses, and now this team is kind of needing this one, and they're a 14-point favorite, total 62.5. What do you like here?
Well, App State, of course, has they're going through a big refresh here. Head coach Dow Loggins here was hired in 2024, and he's had a fantastic coaching career, right? He used to coach in South Carolina as the offensive coordinator. He's also had stops with the Titans, Bears, Dolphins, and Jets. And ODU, of course, had 5 starters coming back. They got Ricky Rain over here since 2020. And he played, at Cornell, and he's been at Kansas State, Vandy, and Penn State. And, Ricky Rain he's had coordinator roles. He's had several coordinator roles, but probably more on the defensive side a little bit too. So when you look at this App State team, at least from a coaching perspective, I like App State from a coaching perspective. However, they are 4-3. Old Dominion is 4-3. App State, I don't think this is much of a respect for App State. I think for a new ball club coach, this team has done pretty well. They played relatively well against Oregon State. They beat them. They beat Georgia State. They did come off of losing to Coastal Carolina. Look, I know Old Dominion, though, is going to be really ticked off. They just gave up 63 points to James Madison in a game. They were only a 3-point dog. They lost to Marshall 24-48 as a 14.5-point chalk. I mean, after that win against Virginia Tech, they've had to play 2 pretty darn good teams, and they've really struggled here. I think this is a lot of points for App State. App State beat them 28-20 as well. I understand that Old Dominion is really frustrated and angry, but this App State team is not bad at all. They're getting a lot of points. They have an NFL caliber coach here, and I think they'll be all right. I'm going to take the points here. Is it going to make my card? No. But you mean to tell me you give me Dow Loggins here, who's a former offensive coordinator at South Carolina and a longtime NFL coaching career? Yeah, I'll take the 14 points here. Craig, you have Northwestern. He has a 7-point dog here against Northwestern, obviously, or Nebraska, I should say. Both these teams are 5-2. Northwestern only being a 7-point dog is interesting. Maybe all this talk about Matt Rule going over to Penn State has sort of thrown this team off a little bit. Northwestern coming off a nice 19-0 win against Purdue. Big win against Penn State. They didn't have a letdown against Purdue at all. They beat Louisiana-Monroe. They beat UCLA. Northwestern has quietly become 5-2, and that opening loss to Tulane looks a little off the radar now because they've turned it around. Nebraska may be in a bit of a flux here with their head coach leaving. You know what kind of flux that creates. What do you like here?
Yeah, until that Penn State job gets resolved, Matt Rule is. I'm not saying he's campaigning, but when you go to Penn State, played for Joe Pa, met your wife there, there's interest there on his end. And so I think that was a huge distraction last week. I think Minnesota was going to cover either way, but that just helped that. And they haven't covered for like 3-4 weeks now. It's like this team is just the perception that Nebraska's going to be good. We've had that for a decade plus now. It's just not been the case since they came over to the Big Ten. I'm taking Northwestern plus the 7. I think they're a live underdog. I think Northwestern's better than what people think. Other than that ULM win, I mean, they've had it just week after week. They've just been impressive. I mean, they could have easily let down last week against a struggling Purdue, and they did not. I like them again this week, taking the points. Next game, we're looking at Auburn, Arkansas. Auburn, Coach Freeze is hot seat. Hot. He loses this one, don't come to the locker room. That might be the message. Arkansas is favored by 1. I couldn't believe this one. Total 57. What do you like here?
I mean, Arkansas's played well, right? I mean, because you have Auburn here 3-4 and Arkansas at 2-5. I will tell you this: Auburn has a fantastic stadium to play at every week. I know a lot of people that go to Auburn games, and they have a great time. They do a great job of that. And that team, deserves to win at some point. But Arkansas coming here, they beat them 24-14 last year. Auburn now losing to Oklahoma, losing to Texas A&M, losing to Georgia, losing to Missouri, all tight games. None of them were blowouts by any means. But Arkansas at the same time, with Petrino, lost by 3 to A&M, lost by 3 to Tennessee. Those are impressive losses. I still think they were really harsh on their coach because they lost to Ole Miss by 6 and Memphis by 1. And Memphis is a top 25 caliber team. So I think they were pretty harsh against him. That only bad loss was to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's going to be a college football playoff team probably. So I think they might have jumped the gun a little bit, but maybe they were just tired in general and they just wanted to change too. So when you put that into perspective, I want you to know that Auburn returned 11 starters from last year. Freeze, of course, was with Liberty before that as a head coach. Arkansas, of course, had Sam, they have a great offensive guru here in Petrino. I think what probably happens here, and I think the total sits at around 57. You have one coach that's coaching for his job, man. You really do. And I think that he's just going to put everything forward. And I think that issue with Arkansas has always been that defensive side of the ball. And I'm going to back Auburn here on a desperation of Freeze. They did go to, if you remember, I mean, at the end of the day, Auburn did go to Texas A&M and lost by 6. That's impressive. They went to Oklahoma and lost by 7. They beat Baylor on the road. I'm going to take Auburn to fight for their life here. I like Auburn. Akron and Buffalo here, Craig. Akron 9.5-point dog against Buffalo on a total of 47.5, I believe. Akron off that loss to Ball State 28-42. Buffalo comes off nice wins against Mass and UMass in Eastern Michigan. Who do you like here?
Now, beating UMass by 7 is not good. UMass is bottom 5 team in the league, in not only just the league, in all of college football, in my opinion. But they did almost beat UConn the game 3 games back. So if Buffalo plays that good, I think they'll win this game for sure. Will they cover by 10? I don't know. I can't believe it. I'm going to take Akron plus the points. Like they hung close against Miami, Ohio. They only lost 20-7. I think Miami, Ohio is better than Buffalo. I think if we get that type of performance, I think Akron will get the win. I wish I was getting 10. Maybe you buy this to the key number of 10 if you take Akron. Not a huge play here. I think these are a very sharp line here. But if I was going to lean on this one, it would be Akron. Next game, Utah State and New Mexico, 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. New Mexico's been a much better team than what we remember, one of the worst teams in college football a few years back. New Mexico -3, total 61.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for Utah State and
Utah State fired the coach, right? Like, didn't they fire the coach, Norvell or whatever? So, yeah.
Yes. So Utah State comes into this game as a 3-point dog here. Utah State, they beat San Jose State 30-25, but they're 4-3, and they expect a lot of things, And New Mexico, we talked about how well New Mexico has played this year, beating UCLA and Idaho State and New Mexico State. I've been impressed with New Mexico, to be honest with you. And that big win against Nevada, even though they were 13.5-point chalk, they were able to win that game. Look, New Mexico won this game 50-45, and they're even better this year. But Utah State, of course, did make some changes, right? So you have a New Mexico coach here in Jason Eck. Before that, he was at Idaho, right? He was an offensive coordinator over there. And I think Utah State, notice this total is at 61.5. And I think what happens is Utah State will be much better offensively with their new coach, right? They put up 30 points in their last game. And I think New Mexico coming in off of not playing great against Nevada. I would not be surprised at all to see this game go over the posted total, Craig. Craig, before I forget, as we do Connecticut versus Rice, don't forget to jump on Craig and my football package, the 2-for-1 deal for $99. You're not going to get it anywhere else. And you only get it because you watch this video. So if you want to, and so you
right
get,
here.
it's about 50% off. basically. So you get Craig and I, it's $99 for each of us. But if you watch, because you watch this video and only because we give this link here, you get it at 50% off. So there you go. All right, Craig, let's pop in here between Connecticut and Rice here. Connecticut minus 10.5 point chalk against Rice. Totals at 48.5. Connecticut is 5-2 and Rice is 3-4. But Rice does have a new coach. Connecticut did win 17-10 last year. Again, Connecticut, big win against Boston College for them. 4 straight wins. Rice now 3 straight losses. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think it's a big letdown spot for UConn. I mean, you go from beating an ACC team last week. We liked them last week. I liked UConn. It was a huge sharp line movement. I still liked them. It's just a lot to ask for a team that's not used to success. You know what I mean? It's not like UConn has built this, like, Nick Saban, where it's like they just demand success week after week, and they've seen it. Sometimes you don't play, you have a little letdown, and you just don't cover these big numbers. I think Rice is better than their 3-4 record even indicates. Now, I mean, crazy. They have not covered a home spread yet. They're 0-3, but I do think this is the week. You're getting the hook even. Give me plus 10.5 Rice in a huge letdown spot for UConn. I talked about one of the worst teams in college football, 0-7 UMass here at a very improved CMU team. They come off a nice win last week against, I think that was Bowling Green we talked about. CMU, Central Michigan here, favored by 16.5, total 47.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, UMass, they are 0-7, yes. But I'll tell you what, Craig, they played pretty well against Buffalo. They lost 21-28, and I was impressed. I've always believed whenever the worst team plays the best team, always take the worst team. And Buffalo, they did pass for 403, but UMass surprisingly ran for 187, and that was big boy football, right? Their quarterback only went 6 for 14 for 119 yards.
Hard to win doing that, though.
Yeah, I know. And they still almost beat them, right? But UMass has also played. They're collecting a lot of paychecks too, right? I mean, they played Iowa, they played Missouri, they played some big teams. And you have a Central Michigan here team who comes off a big win against Bowling Green State, who does have Western Michigan on deck. And Central Michigan, they did beat Wagner 49-10, and they beat Bowling Green State recently too. But I'll tell you, the funny thing about Central Michigan is they only threw 4 times last game. They went 2 for 4 for 72 yards, and they rushed, of course, for 203 yards. Bowling Green, of course, went 17 for 25. The question then becomes is how does UMass handle the rush? And UMass doesn't do, of course, we talk UMass, Buffalo only rushed for 72 yards on them. So this could be a situation, a matchup issue, and I like UMass here, plus the 17. UMass handles the rush pretty well, and the total sitting at 47.5. I'm going to back UMass plus the plus the 17 here. Craig, Toledo faces Washington State here. Toledo coming in as a plus 1.5 point dog. Toledo is 4-3. Washington State is 3-4, but they're playing pretty well now. It looks like they're turning some things around. Big win against, after getting blown out by Washington, big win against Colorado State. Almost beat Ole Miss, almost beat Virginia, losing to both teams who are both basically in the top 15 by a combined 5 points. Looks like Washington State's coach turning things around there, but they could have a letdown here. Who do you like?
Yeah, not so fast as they used to say on ESPN. Not so fast. Toledo's really, really good. Really good. They had a letdown against their rival. You just draw a line to that. I think Toledo would be favored here, or maybe should be favored. I like Toledo. It's a huge letdown spot for Washington State. You go and you almost win these 2 games on the road against big conference. All of a sudden, you're playing a MAC team in Toledo at home. Give me Toledo. I think they win outright. Don't even need the points here. Sprinkle on the money line. Next game, got a couple super specials for you. One, if you're a new customer, free $60, DocSports.com/ICCT, right here on the bottom of the screen. Just type that link in, and you get a free $60 to check us out. Next game in the MAC, Northern Illinois is hosting Ball State. Ball State has been improved this year, and it shows with that 5-2 against the spread record. Northern Illinois favored by 5.5, total 41. Northern Illinois is just 1-6 against the spread. What do you like here?
Yeah, you have a Ball State team here who's 3-4, and NIU is 1-6, right? And Ball State, of course, coming off that big win against Akron. They were a 2-point dog. NIU lost to Ohio at 21-48. They were 10.5 point dogs coming into that game. And then Ball State, of course, beat them 25-23 in a close game last year. So Ball State off of a win. NIU is off of 4 straight losses. So this is obviously a motivated NIU team, but NIU is the one that's favored, right? Coming off 4 straight losses, which seems crazy. I think NIU actually bounces back here. I do. I think the fact that they come back home after back-to-back tough losses, they played San Diego State and only lost by 3 at home. They played Miami of Ohio, only lost by 9 at home. They're coming off their worst loss of the year. They're favored by 5.5. They played Mississippi State this year. They played Maryland this year. They played some good teams this year. I'm going to take Northern Illinois minus the 5.5 to finally bounce back here. Craig, Louisiana-Monroe facing Southern Miss here. Southern Miss coming in as a 10.5-point chalk. Louisiana-Monroe coming off that loss to Troy. Southern Miss off that nice win against Louisiana-Lafayette, winning 3 straight. Who do you like?
I mean, look what Southern Miss has done. I mean, the first loss was against Mississippi State, I believe, this year by 17. It wasn't ugly. And Coach Huff has really brought something, a spark to Southern Miss. And this is why teams, no matter big or small, want to get rid of coaches and bring somebody else in. There's that fresh take, and you see these teams take these big step forwards. We've seen that with Southern Miss, but I think it could be a spot of just a little too many points. I think Southern Miss wins. I think they kind of dominate the game, but should they be favored by 10.5? 69% of the public are riding Southern Miss now because they see all this success. Go the other way on this one. Take Louisiana-Monroe. I think it's just a much closer game in the end. I think they win by a touchdown and continue the hot streak, but don't cover for us bettors. So give me ULM as far as with the points. Next game, your Alabama Crimson Tide. Good you get them. Is this a letdown spot? They're favored by 11.5, total 47 against a South Carolina team that's very disappointing. I thought this team could be one of the top teams in the SEC. It hasn't happened. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, Alabama, obviously, big wins against Tennessee, Missouri. The best thing that ever happened to them was FSU. They should make that shirt over in Alabama. FSU is the best thing that ever happened to us because certainly it was a huge win against Tennessee, that revenge from last year. Big win against Missouri, which I thought was actually one of the toughest games they've had all year. As they face South Carolina here, it comes off a bad loss to Oklahoma, coming off a bad loss to LSU, coming off back-to-back losses. This could be a tough game for Alabama. Alabama only beat them by 2 points last year as well. You have South Carolina has a bunch of the defensive starters that return back. And as South Carolina comes off one of its worst losses, Beamer's been there since 2020. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, but certainly this is a game that he needs to at least have a close game here. And if he doesn't,
I don't think he's on the hot seat, but I think he might end up as the Virginia Tech coach, FYI. Calling up his dad, his dad's prowess there.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, but I mean, he's been in South Carolina for 5 years. But I will tell you this: maybe expectations are a little bit less. You might be right about that. Expectations are a little bit less over in the ACC. He gets a couple extra easier. It's a lot easier facing, Boston College and Wake Forest than it is to go out and now face Alabama, then Tennessee. I mean, Jesus Christ, unless you have the budget, and South Carolina doesn't have the budget like an Alabama or a Georgia to throw at here. But Virginia Tech could find some engineers over there. They're a top 10 engineering school, I believe, to find that money. I'm going to take South Carolina here, man. I think they give their absolute best effort here. I think they fall short, but I think they lose by like a field goal or 5 points. By the way, don't forget, 2-for-1 package, Craig and Arun, 50% off. I meant to tee it off before the Alabama game because I know a lot of you were watching for that Alabama game. But each of us would be $99. But because you get both of them together, this is the only place in the world you can get both of our packages for
Got to use the link
combined, right? In the world, this is the only link you can find that you can't find this on the website, and that's only because you're watching us. And we appreciate you, and it's a way for you to appreciate us. All right, so you get all of our football plays for this weekend, and we hope you come back every week for our football package for the week. All right, Minnesota and Iowa here hooking up. Iowa coming in as a 9.5-point chalk. Minnesota coming in as a big dog. What do you like?
I mean, you don't get below 40. You don't get below 50 much in college football anymore. This is going to be first team to 20 for sure wins this game. I think you take Minnesota here. I think that was a huge confidence building. They have the same record, but we're getting basically 10 points. So, I'm going to buy the 0.5 point, take Minnesota here. I think it could end up being 13-10 type game. I think Iowa could win 13-10. I would lean towards the under too if that's crazy enough on that low total. But of the two, I like Minnesota. Like I said, I would buy the 0.5 point to 10. Next game, BYU at Iowa State. BYU is in a huge letdown spot. Huge. They won the Holy War last week. What a big win. Fox Game Day was out there, so it was a huge spot for them. Now they have to go to Iowa State that's off a couple tough losses. Iowa State's favored by 2.5, total 49. What do you think here?
Well, I have a rule that I don't go against BYU anymore and that coach. Okay, because I think there's some phantom calls, maybe, and me being, from me being of Indian descent, Hinduism is polytheistic. You believe in multiple gods. So maybe the Mormon God gives them a bunch of calls late. I don't know, man. But they seem to, they see, which is funny because I grew up Hindu, but I went to a Baptist school as well. And I grew up and I went to pre-K and kindergarten at a Seventh-day Adventist school.
Now we know why you're confused at times. It's like you're just looking. You're looking.
So, I went to a Seventh-day Adventist school. I've been to a Baptist school. I grew up in a Catholic school when I was like 8, and then obviously of Indian descent. So it's funny. But BYU comes in here, huge win against Utah. They didn't deserve to win that game, Craig. They did not deserve it. I believe, and I'm pretty sure Utah outgained them by almost over 100 yards. They had no business winning that game, and that's because Utah kept having a turnover on downs every time they got within the 15-yard line, trying to punch it in. And, that's what that coach deserves. I don't know what else to say. Iowa State, of course, comes in off that loss to Colorado where their favorite loss to Cincinnati. But this is Iowa State beat Iowa. And I think that's a big win. And Iowa State went to Kansas on the road, and they beat them as well. They beat Miami last year. This could do wonders for, Iowa State. I got to be something else honest with you, too. Nobody wants BYU to win this game. Nobody wants to see BYU in the college football playoff. Not a lot of people do. I think the committee, frankly, would rather have a team like Missouri sneak in, or especially if they beat Vanderbilt, or even or even
Well, it won't be because they're going to get a Big 12 team and it's guaranteed. So the only way BYU is getting in is as the Big 12 rep. So
yeah, I mean, I just don't see I don't think, and it's a shame, but I just don't see, I mean, Iowa State, of course, for them to get back in the top 25 would be huge. And of course, this win here puts them back in the top 25. They're desperate for a big win. That's a reason why they're favored here. I mean, how much disrespect can there be, right? BYU is a top 11 or top 10 team, and you're a 2.5-point dog on a road to an unranked team. I'm taking Iowa State here. They've won a lot of big games in the past, and I can see them possibly winning this game here. All right, Craig, Illinois 5-point dog against Washington. Washington rolls in as a 5. Both these teams are 5-2. They haven't met since 2014. Illinois coming off that 16-34 loss to Ohio State. Washington coming off that 7-24 loss to Michigan. Who do you like?
Yeah, a week off last week for Illinois. They needed that. I mean, they went through the gauntlet. IU, USC, Purdue, Ohio State. So really only had one easy game. Washington's kind of been a globe traveler. I mean, to start the month, they went at Maryland, then home against Rutgers, then at Michigan. They did not look good against Michigan. Let's be honest. I don't think they should be this big a favorite, to be honest. I think Illinois is it should be basically a pick-up game. It was on neutral field, so I would give them a 3-point favorite. That's where it should be. We're getting the extra points. Illinois is going to play smash mouth football. I think that's what you need to do to control the ball, less possessions. I think Brett Bielema is a really good coach. I really do think he's got this Illinois team. They haven't quite turned it around all the way as far as being like powerhouse team, but a win at Washington would go a long way towards that. I think they might even win this game, but I want to take the points, 4.5, 5. I think Illinois covers the spread in this one. Big game here next. It's in the SEC. Missouri's had 2 tough losses in a row. I mean, it just shows you it's a absolute gauntlet in the SEC. And now they face at Vandy, and Vandy's only a 2.5-point favorite. Did anybody not watch the Alabama game? Did anybody not watch the LSU win? It's like Vandy's getting disrespected here, total 52.5. I think potentially Vandy runs the table. Pavia, or what's his name, could win the Heisman.
Yeah.
That's crazy. A Vandy quarterback to win the Heisman. I think that's how good he's performed, especially against LSU. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the fact they went into Alabama when Alabama had revenge and were tied at the half, I think says a lot, because Alabama had revenge against Tennessee, and you saw what happened. So now you have a Vandy team that lost to Missouri, if you remember, 30-27 in overtime last year. And that was a tough loss because, they ended up scoring a touchdown, and then eventually Missouri put up, a field goal. Vandy in that game only rushed for 146 and passed for 178, and Missouri outgained them by almost 150 yards, and yet Vandy was in that game. Okay, so Vandy, I believe you have a situation here. They beat LSU 31-24 in the last game. Missouri comes off that big win against Auburn. Missouri, to their credit, Craig, only lost to Alabama by 3. It is hard for me to take such a public favorite But I believe in this Vandy team somewhat. I like the fact that they have revenge. They have better talent from last year. I have nothing but respect for Missouri. I took Missouri against Auburn as well. Uh, but I will say that Missouri, when they faced Auburn recently, they had to beat them in overtime, right? And that was a game where they were down going into the fourth quarter, and they were only able to rush for 91. They rushed 44 times for 91 yards. Okay, and Auburn was able to run for 150 yards on them. And Vandy has very creative offensive schemes. And I know 70% of the public's favoring Vandy. I might give it on Vandy money line. I can see Vandy maybe winning by 1 or 2 points. So I'm going to take Vandy on the money line here. I just think it's a great story in college football. And I just think in college game day is going to be there as well. So I can see the prep going in for Vandy. If they didn't have the revenge, I might have leaned on Missouri, similar to the Auburn game. But I'm going to have to back Vanderbilt here. All right, Craig, San Diego State here, and that's Vanderbilt money line, by the way. San Diego State here, minus 3-point favorite against Fresno, Craig. You have a San Diego State team that played them in 2023, beat them 33-18, coming off 4 straight wins here against Nevada, Colorado State, NIU, and Cal. Fresno State, of course, coming off that loss against Colorado State, 21-49. Who do you like?
It's weird how a loss can wake up a team. That was a bad loss. Not just that they lost, but the way they lost. San Diego State at Washington State early. That was their only loss, actually. But it puts something into this team, and I think it continues this week. This is a good Fresno team, so this would be a good road win. But I just think San Diego State's playing differently. I thought San Diego State would have I thought they'd be lucky to be 500 this year. I was just wrong on this team. Sometimes you have to adjust and move and bob and weave, as they say in boxing. Bob and weave as the handicapper as well. We are bobbing and weaving. We're taking San Diego State -3 in this one. Next game, FAU Navy at 3:30. Navy's favored by 14.5. Total 62.5. Navy's still undefeated, 6-0. No one's really talking about them. They've got a couple big conference games ahead of them. Is this a letdown spot here?
Well, FAU is 3-4. Obviously, Navy is undefeated, and I will tell you that Navy has been a great story too. Of course, they're not in the top 25, but FAU coming off that tough loss against South Florida, 13-48, and we know how good South Florida is. And they did beat UAB by 20, and UAB, you saw what they did to Memphis. They beat Rice as well, and you have a Navy team here who, of course, comes off that big win against Temple as 10-point chalk. Navy, by the way, Craig, hasn't lost since November 16th of last year. So it's almost been, and that includes an Oklahoma win in there too. But again, they're facing North Texas the next week. Florida Atlantic comes off one of its worst losses.
And Notre Dame the week after that, and South Florida the week after that. I mean, they have everybody lined up in front of them, FYI.
Yep. And that's wild, right? Because the funny thing is, if Navy ends up somehow beating North Texas, Notre Dame, and South Florida, even if they win two out of the 3, they might be in the playoff, right? I mean, you walk in and you beat, let's say you lose to North Texas, but then you beat Notre Dame and South Florida. I think you got to be in.
Well, they'll be in the conference championship then, so then they'd have to win the conference championship.
Yes. So it'll be, and they might have to face one of those teams again. If they beat them twice, then definitely you got to take a look at them. Put it all together. I'm going to back Florida Atlantic, man. As they come off the worst loss to South Florida, it makes sense to me. They were, this was a team that didn't score in the fourth quarter. That game was worse than, the score looked worse than it actually is because South Florida put up 17 points late in that game. But Florida Atlantic still passed for 289 in that game. So I'm going to back Florida Atlantic plus the points here. I think it's worth it. Plus the 14.5. It's one of the best public fades on the board as well. Craig, Western Michigan here hooking up against Miami of Ohio. Western Michigan is a 2-point dog coming in here. They've won 4 in a row, and Miami of Ohio has, of course, lost. Or they've also won 4 in a row too. Both these teams are 4-3, but they both started off 0-3. It's been a good run for both of them. Who do you like here?
I thought Miami would potentially be the 3rd or 4th best team in the league. I was wrong. Western Michigan has taken that spot by winning against Toledo. Toledo was, I thought, the best team in the league. If not, Ohio would be second. Western Michigan wins this game. You look at their schedule; they could be in the conference championship game. I like them again this week. They're getting respect just as a 2-point favorite. I think for a reason. Western Michigan's a live underdog. I'm going to take them on the money line as an underdog. Next game, Temple and Tulsa. Temple's favored by 6 in this one. I was kind of a little shocked here. I thought Tulsa would maybe be like a 3-point favorite. Total 53.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, look, Temple beat them last year, 20-10. Tulsa, of course, has a new coach. They covered against ECU, 27-41, and I've actually met Tulsa's coach at one point. So so you have a Tulsa coach here who lost to ECU 27-41, then lost to Memphis 7-45. They've lost 3 straight in a row. Temple, though, has a fantastic head coach. I think he was a former head coach of Sam Houston State. No, Casey Keeler, right? And he was hired Sam Houston. He was a former Sam Houston State head coach. He was also at the Delaware Fighting Blue Hens, and he won a national championship over there before they became FBS from FCS. And then you have head coach Trey Lamb here, who was a head coach at Tennessee State, etc. Look, he's a former QB coordinator as well. So I think what happens here is Temple is talented, Craig. They've covered 4 in a row. They've covered 7 of 8. The one game they didn't cover was the game that I was on against Oklahoma. They covered every game except that game. And they covered against Georgia Tech, UTSA, Navy. They lost by 1 point as a 10-point dog. And Charlotte. I think what happens here is that Temple rolls in, and I hate going against. But this Casey Keeler knows Tulsa pretty well. Okay, because he's from that area. I like Temple. They're playing really good football right now. I understand that Tulsa is desperate here, but I'm going to lay the points here with Temple in that offense. Craig, NC State 6.5-point dog against Pittsburgh. By the way, don't forget. I'll tell you that in a second after you finish this game. I'll tee it off. But NC State 6.5-point dog against Pittsburgh. Total of 57. NC State's 4-3 and Pitt's 5-2. But I think the difference here is NC State losing to Notre Dame in their last game. Pittsburgh coming off 3 straight wins. Boston College, FSU, and Syracuse. Who do you like?
NC State did get a bye. It's a pretty, they didn't really have any answers against Notre Dame. Notre Dame is super talented. Notre Dame's 4 or 5 points from being undefeated this year. If they win out, they're for sure going to be in the playoffs. They do not face. Right now Navy's undefeated, so they're going to face potentially a Navy team that's only got 1 loss or undefeated. But they should murder everybody else. NC State, I think, will bounce back here. Pitt has been really good. If Pitt, they were up against Louisville, if they would have won that game, look where that would put Pitt right now. I think Pitt's a really good team. I just think this is going to come right down to the wire. I think these teams aren't that far off. I don't think it's 6.5 points difference between the two. I would buy the 0.5 point to get NC State plus the 7, but off of a bye, I think they're going to play a really good game here. Next game, but before we do so, here, tee this up, IC.
Yeah, we try to tee this up between the right before some of the big games because we know how you guys want the predictions on some of the bigger games probably. Look, each one of Craig and my package would be $99 a week, but instead you get 2 for 1. You get both of our football packages for $99, which is just an insane deal. We're trying it out. We're running it. We're seeing how it goes, but you can only find it in that link below, docsports.com/Craig Arun, where you get both of our packages. And if it works well, maybe we'll do this for the NBA. Maybe we'll do this for some other sports as well. But for football, we do cover every single game. But again, you can only find this here.
Oklahoma State at Texas Tech. Texas Tech, I thought they were going to run the table, to be very honest. So they got the loss. They're playing the worst team they play rest of the year. 38.5-point favorite, total 57. Is this a lay the wood, get right game?
Yeah, look, Oklahoma State here and losing to Cincinnati. Oklahoma State, they've lost 9 of 10 covers, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And no team is going to take it easy on them. Houston, since they're still a name brand, no one's going to take it easy on them. Texas Tech is going to be pissed coming into this game, losing 7.5. They were 7.5-point chalk coming into this game. They had beaten Kansas and Houston and Utah. They demolished Utah by 24. And I think they can win this game by a wide margin. I think they're going to be so mad coming into this game. And, something else to note here is Texas Tech had a pretty much of a shootout with them, 56-48 last year. Now, Oklahoma State, this could be their Super Bowl. They could really get up for this game, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Joey McGuire's team is going to get up for this game. I want to point out that Texas Tech is ranked 14th now. They dropped 7 points. They are well aware that you can have BYU losing this week. You can have Oklahoma possibly losing this week. And there's a couple of things. You can have Georgia Tech possibly losing this week. So they know all this too. I'm not Georgia Tech, sorry. I meant to say Oklahoma and BYU and Vandy. These are the 3 that they might be losing. So they could be literally right back in. So, I like Texas Tech to lay the wood. I think that's the only way to look at it. I'm not messing with the total. Craig, Baylor hooking up against Cincinnati. Baylor 4.5-point dog here against Cincinnati. Keep in mind that, Baylor comes off that loss at TCU as a 3.5-point dog. They haven't lost back-to-back games all year. Cincinnati, of course, has won 6 in a row since that opening loss to Nebraska. They find themselves at 6-1. I will tell you that Cincinnati's back into the top 25 at 21. Who do you like here?
I thought last week Cincinnati could maybe go in there and lay a stinker. It tells you that they did not take that game lightly. And I'm in Cincinnati this week. I'm at my apartment here, and it is the buzz around town is for real. This is back when Luke Fickell had that team that was in the playoffs. Like, I haven't heard this in a long time. It will be a super raucous event. I think they lay the wood here. This Cincinnati team is for real. They had the ball driving against Nebraska and would be undefeated if they would have gotten that one, in my opinion. So I like Cincinnati minus the 4.5. Not a homer pick because I'm not a huge Bearcat.
Well, they're going to get their chance if they win out, right?
They're undefeated in the Big 12, by the way.
Yeah.
So, like, even if they lose here, there's a lot of teams are going to beat each other in the Big 12, so they're still going to have a chance at Big 12 championship. But if they get this win, got a pretty tough schedule ahead, so they kind of need this one. Next game, Texas at Mississippi State. I think this Mississippi State team is way better than their 4-3 record indicates. I think this is danger spot, so I'm interested in what you like here. Texas -7. Total 44.5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Texas did return 11 starters from last season, but that hasn't boded well for them. But Mississippi State returned 16 starters, 9 on offense and 7 on defense, and that's worked out great for them. We knew they were good when they played Arizona State and gave them all they can handle. And, you have a Mississippi State coach here, Jeff Lebby, who's in his second season, who's having a great season. Prior to Mississippi State, he was over he was the offensive coordinator at University of Oklahoma, and he also stopped by at Ole Miss and UCF. And if he stopped by Ole Miss, you knew that Lane Kiffin had a lot of respect for him. And if Lane Kiffin has respect for you, that's something to be said about that, man, because that's pretty impressive. So Jeff Lebby is the real deal, and he's shown it. Texas, of course, comes off a 3-point win against Kentucky. Was not impressive in that game. They are 5-2. Their 2 losses are to Florida and Ohio State. The funny thing, Craig, is if they don't lose that Florida game, things could be a lot different for Texas. But Texas got beat, and they got beat bad. I mean, they were down 14-29. So keep that in mind. Mississippi State, of course, losing to Florida by 2. That was a game that I really liked. Mississippi State and hanging tough. They lost to Tennessee in a tight game, lost to A&M in a tight game. Or not tight game, but they lost to A&M. Mississippi State has quietly covered 8 of their last 10. This is a wonderful opportunity. Texas beat them by 22 points last year. I understand the public is on Mississippi State plus a 7, but if you're the odds maker, how do you make you have to make Mississippi State a touchdown dog here against Texas. Sometimes the way the line is, and even though the public goes, some of the consensus polls we look at are pretty sharper people are on those consensus polls, right? So you have to understand, like, most of the average bettor is definitely not doing consensus polls, right? They're just like, Texas touchdown favorite against Mississippi State. Wow, back when my daddy was there, Texas used to beat them by 30 points. Everything's still the same 30 years later. No, I think Mississippi State's the real deal. They've lost a bunch in a row, and I like Mississippi State plus the 7 here. I think if they can, Arizona State might be a better team than Texas, to be quite honest with you. So if they can do that against Arizona State at home, why not against Texas? Craig, TCU minus 15-point chalk here against West Virginia. TCU comes off a nice win against Baylor, 42-36. West Virginia, of course, now has lost 4 in a row. Rich Rod, but coming off his worst loss probably since the Utah game. Rich Rod, welcome to this conference. It is brutal. West Virginia, solid 15-point home dog. Who do you like?
I think TCU's in a huge letdown spot. And in West Virginia, remember, they had a huge comeback and covered against BYU. If they play that game at home, and Morgantown at night is a different bird. This is a tough spot to go play at. Very tough to get to from Texas to Morgantown, West Virginia. I think this is a easy cover by West Virginia. I think TCU has to survive this one. I do think they win, but I don't think they cover the 2+ touchdowns here. Give me the 15 points in West Virginia. Next game, not the greatest game. Usually this would be a good game. Usually Louisiana's relatively good. They're just not this year. Troy is pretty good. Troy minus 9.5, total 47.5. What do you like?
Well, Louisiana Lafayette is 2-5, and Troy is 5-2. Louisiana Lafayette, losing to Southern Miss 10-22, losing to James Madison 14-24. You have a Troy team coming in here winning 4 straight games, beating Louisiana-Monroe, Texas State, South Alabama, and Buffalo. These are big wins by Troy, and Louisiana Lafayette beat them by 21 last year too. Now, I don't like that Louisiana comes off back-to-back losses, but I will tell you, Troy has massive revenge. Troy's playing really well right now. And you have a Troy team here. I will tell you, the first thing I was curious about is the total in this game, and I was shocked to see this total of 47.5 because I thought this total would come out a little bit higher. But keep in mind that the Raging Cajuns, of course, have you have a head coach here who, in Michael Desmarais, in his fourth year over here, he used to be a former offensive coordinator. Troy, of course, has Jared Parker. He obviously Joe Summerall was also involved too. But I like the fact that Troy, comes into this game having won 4 straight. Louisiana Lafayette has lost back-to-back games. Their strength is obviously on the defensive side of the ball. Even when they lost to James Madison, they only lost 14-24, which I was really impressed with it because they played great defense. So I'm actually going to lean on the under here in this game. I think Louisiana Lafayette coming off back-to-back losses, I think motivates them. I think they play a much tighter game. Troy will win, but I like the under. I'm not messing with the side. And don't forget the 2-for-1 deal for Craig and I. You get both of our packages for $99. One of our packages is $99. You're going to get both of us for $99. You can only find it in this link here on this link, and you cannot find it on the site, and that's only because you're watching this video.
Should have what? 8 plus 7 or 8 plus 6 in my book is 14. 14 plays this week, including 3 top plays.
I don't even know if we're going to continue it because we're a little afraid to see what the feedback might be because we're giving it at 50% off. But we love you guys. We enjoy you guys watching this video, so we wanted to thank you guys as well for hanging out with us every week. All right, Stanford coming in as a 30-point dog to the mighty Miami. Stanford, of course, beat FSU as a 17.5-point dog. Miami, Craig, losing to Louisville by 3 as a 10.5-point chalk. They dropped to 9th in the country. Okay, so now Miami's rooting for Virginia every chance that they get. So what do you like here? Miami coming off that 3-point loss. Stanford coming off that nice win against FSU. Who do you like?
Huge letdown for Stanford and a huge get-right game for Miami. I mean, this could not be worse for Stanford. Yeah. But it's a lot of points to lay. I wouldn't lay this kind of number. I mean, probably 10 times in my career I've ever laid this kind of number. Play the over. I think Miami might go over on their own. Beck went from being Heisman candidate to 3 or 4 interceptions last week. I think they have a big game here. Take the over 46 points as Miami routs them in this week. Georgia Southern at Arkansas State's the next game we're looking at. Arkansas State's -2, total 63.5. What do you like here?
Okay, so Georgia Southern here as a 2-point dog here. Both these teams are 3-4. Georgia Southern coming off a big get-right game against Georgia State. Right, they had lost back-to-back games. If you remember, Georgia Southern is led by Clay Helton, the former USC head coach. Pretty crazy to coach at USC and then go to Georgia Southern, but life might be good there in Statesboro where the boiled peanuts are fantastic. Arkansas State here coming off back-to-back big wins against South Alabama and Texas State. I will tell you that Georgia Southern hasn't played them since 2021. This is a great opportunity for Georgia Southern to win outright, man. I like the fact that Arkansas State comes off back-to-back big wins. Arkansas State, Craig, has not won 3 in a row in ages, okay? And they have won back-to-back big games as 13.5 and 9-point dogs. Great opportunity for this team. Georgia Southern lost to James Madison 10-35 in their last road game, lost to USC, lost to Fresno. They've yet to win a road game all year, and I think it's going to motivate them. Georgia Southern might be on my card, or I might flake out and take them as my free pick on Saturday. Craig, Wisconsin against Oregon. Wisconsin coming in 2-5. Oregon 6-1. What a bad year for Wisconsin. No points against Ohio State. No points against Iowa. 10 points against Michigan. 10 points against Maryland. When you hire a head coach, it is a big decision. And when you make a mistake, it affects your entire flipping town and your entire flipping state. Okay? I mean, it's borderline next to the governor. I mean, it is a huge deal. And imagine if Alabama hired the wrong coach and the loss of revenue there, you know. Oregon comes in off that big win against Rutgers, 56-10. That was their get right game. Oregon only beat them by 13 points last year. Is this going to get ugly, Craig? What do you think?
Well, it will be ugly. Is they going to cover this big number? I don't think so, because I think Oregon's I think they have a bye next week. They're like, let's just get this win. Then they play at Iowa the following week. So it's they have a lot in front of them, Oregon. They need to stay healthy. They just need to win in advance, because if you do so, they're going to be in the playoffs most likely. I think you take Wisconsin plus the points here. It's a big number. Wisconsin hasn't lost by more than this all year, including against Ohio State last week. I think this is a dominating win by Oregon, but 33.5 is just too many points. Take Wisconsin. Small lean here, FYI. BC at Louisville's next game here in the ACC. Louisville's big favorite by 25 off of that big win at Miami midweek last week. Total 55. Seems like a big letdown spot for Louisville to be this big a favorite. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Boston College, I thought they would be better this year, man. And they're just 1-6. And maybe it's just one of those things where they have to pipe in more talent. I mean, they had a lot of guys leave and get poached as well. So keep that in mind. Coming off a 12-point loss to Connecticut, that's a big deal, actually. The fact that Connecticut rolled in and beat them, it kind of shows Connecticut is back, once again. Louisville, of course, comes off a huge win against Miami. Louisville does have Virginia Tech, Cal, and Clemson on deck. So Louisville, if they can just kind of remain focused here, they're 19th in the country, Craig, and they have one loss. They're one of those teams that are just like Virginia. Their loss is to Virginia, by the way, by 3. And if they ended up winning that game, they'd probably be sitting around close to around the top 10, where sort of Georgia Tech and BYU is. So Boston College coming off that bad loss. Louisville, of course, comes off that big win against Miami. How does Boston College respond? I think Boston College is going to put forth their best effort. The only problem is I just don't think Louisville might, I don't think they'll take them too lightly. But with Boston College coming off of such a bad loss, the fact that Louisville comes off monster win against Miami, I just don't know how they necessarily get completely focused here. And remember, Louisville has not covered back-to-back games all year long either, right? So even when they beat Pittsburgh on the road, they came back to lose Virginia, and that was their biggest win of the year. So that looks bad. I'm going to take Boston College here, plus the 25. Craig, Michigan versus Michigan State here. Not as much flair as it used to have, right now. But Michigan, 14.5-point chalk. They're 5-2. Michigan State is 3-4. Ever since D'Antoni left, things have just been harder for Michigan State. But Michigan comes off that nice win against Washington. That's going to bode well for them in the future. Michigan State comes off that tough loss to Indiana, but they did cover. Who do you like here?
Rivalry game getting more than 2 touchdowns is you have to put an asterisk by it, right? Can they score? That's the question. Michigan State's going to, this is a good Michigan defense. I'm going to, this is slight lean, and I mean slight. I would probably stay far away from this one, but if I'm going to play it, I'm taking Michigan State plus the points. It's just rivalry games. Points are always the thing you should do, especially if you're in football and you're getting 2+ touchdowns. I think Michigan is a really good team. I think Michigan could win out until they face Ohio State, and then if Michigan wins that game, they're still going to be in the national or in the playoffs. That's just scary to think, considering what we've seen Michigan with their 2 losses. But I like Michigan State plus the points, and this one is a small lean. Next game, Colorado State and Wyoming. Not the greatest game here. Wyoming's favored by 5.5, total 46.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, Colorado State's 2-5, coming off a tough loss to Hawaii at home, where they were actually a 3-point favorite. They did beat Fresno State, thinking that they could turn things around, but they didn't. Colorado State has not covered back-to-back games since going back to last year, previously before November. Wyoming off a tough loss to Air Force, but that was impressive. They only lost by 3. They're a 4-point dog. They beat San Jose State recently, too. I thought they played pretty darn well against UNLV, losing by 14. I like that both these teams sort of come off losses. I'm more impressed with Wyoming than I am Colorado State. Keep that in mind. So Colorado State beat them 24-10 last year. I mean, would I lay the wood on Wyoming? No, but do I like Wyoming minus the 5.5? Yes, I think that kind of makes sense here. So I'm going to back Wyoming here just because I think they played a much tougher set of competition, and I think they've hung tougher against much better teams. And I'm going to back Wyoming. 2-for-1 deal for Craig and I. One package of our football on the site is $99. You get both of us for $99. You can only find it here on this link. You can't find it anywhere else. And that's only when we do these combined videos you get them. And you get them for 50% off just because watching the videos, etc. Again, DocSports.com, Craig and Arun, 50% off, and that is the only place where you can find them. All right, Craig, Texas A&M, 2.5-point chalk here against LSU. How things have changed, right? Now that LSU is sitting around 19th or 20th in the country. Texas A&M, of course, is undefeated. Mike Elko has done a great job. They're number 3 in the country. They are undefeated. They didn't cover against Arkansas, but they survived, and that's all that matters at this point. Of course, their most impressive win is on that road against Notre Dame. Monster win. LSU coming off that tough loss against Vandy in a game where Vandy had revenge. LSU also lost to Ole Miss by 5. Who do you like here?
Brian Kelly gets fired is my prediction after this game, which is crazy. It was what? It was similar to Penn State. A month ago, they're in the top 10. People are thinking LSU wins some of these really big games in the future. They're going to be in the playoffs, and all of a sudden they fire James Franklin. Same thing I think is going to happen to Brian Kelly. It just was a weird fit from the very beginning.
So crazy, man. They went to the college football playoff. He's one play away from a national championship, and he gets fired.
Brian Kelly, where would this team? I mean, after he won the opening week at Clemson, we would have thought they would be there. But I think Texas A&M's for real. That win at Notre Dame is still looking better and better and better as this really good Notre Dame team progresses through their season. I think Texas A&M has no letdown here. This Coach Elko is great. Like, this guy is just like a bulldog. It kind of reminds me a little bit like Dan Campbell, where like coaching matters. We've said this many times on the show. It just is, especially in college.
Coach Elko, Brent Key, Dan Campbell, all the same.
Yeah,
from the same cloth.
Just unbelievable. I think there's no letdown here. I think they go in and lay the wood. I don't think it's really as close as what the line suggests. I can't believe this isn't a bigger public play. Texas A&M minus the 2.5. Next game, Tennessee -9 at Kentucky. For people that don't know, this is a huge rivalry game, not just for basketball, for football as well. Tennessee, big favorite here, total 53.5. Can they get it done here on the road?
Yeah, I mean, but the funny thing is Tennessee's lost 4 straight covers, right? After they lost to Georgia 41-44, they were 39-point chalk against UAB, and they didn't cover. It was 56-24. They got up 42-7, and then they kind of laid off the gas, right? Because the following week they had Mississippi State. It's one of your theories, which is always when a team gets up big, they kind of lay off the gas for the next team. Look, you have a Tennessee team that put up 20 points in the last game. That's their lowest output since December 21st of last year. This is a low output for them. They only had 7 points in the first half against the Alabama defense. They only passed for 268, which is pretty low for them. So they're going to come in ticked off here. Kentucky, of course, losing to Texas. Looked pretty good, though, 13-16. They lost to Texas. They lost to Georgia. They lost to South Carolina by 22. They just don't have the manpower, in my opinion. And they did lose in overtime to Texas. They could be hung over from that loss. Does Kentucky rally behind and say, kumbaya, let's get it back after this loss? I don't think so. I think you're going to see a pretty angry Tennessee team. Remember, Kentucky lost to Texas, and Arch went 12 for 27 for 132. Well, I can promise you the Tennessee quarterback isn't going to go 12 for 27 for 132. Aguilar went for 268 against Alabama. I mean, just to give you an example, Aguilar has the potential to put up monster numbers. I mean, he put up what? Yeah, I mean, he could put up 300 to 400 yards this game just out of anger. And Tennessee was they're 5-2 as well. They can't take any chances at all. I'm back in Tennessee here, dude. I want you to know that Tennessee now sits, Craig, at 17. They dropped 6 points, so they're going to need some help too. And certainly a big win over Kentucky, especially after Texas struggled against, could help them. Craig, Houston here, 8-point dog here against Arizona State. Houston is 6-1, and they find themselves as an 8-point dog. Houston is not ranked in the top 25. Houston did beat Arizona 31-28 last game. They covered back-to-back games now. Arizona State, of course, comes off that big win against Texas Tech by 4 as a 7.5-point dog. Who do you like?
Huge letdown. That was a monster win against a Texas Tech team that a lot of people thought were going to run the table this year. And to win that, and then now have to face a Houston team that's better. I know they're not ranked. They're 6-1 for they're taking care of business. It's not always the most visually it's not a team going out there that's got the air raid putting up 70, but they're finding ways to win the game. I like Houston here plus the points. I do think Arizona, at home, they'll probably find a way late to win the game, to pull it out. But I just think it's asking a lot for a team like Arizona State to come off of that high and then get back up this week. Give me Houston plus the 8 in this one. Speaking of a revenge or a spot that's a bounce back, Utah is definitely in a bounce back after losing the holy word to BYU last week. They're facing Colorado here. Utah's a 14-point favorite, total 50. Last game on the board here, I see. What do you like?
Well, I got to be honest with you. Colorado's 3-4. Impressive win against Iowa State, right? 3-point dog, and they won. They only lost to BYU by 3 points as well. They beat Wyoming by 17. I mean, they show up every week. There's no doubt about it. Deion's had a definite impact on them. Utah, of course, losing 21-24. And that was their, they lost to Texas Tech as well. That was a bad loss. Last time they lost was 10-34 to Texas Tech, and then they beat West Virginia 48-14 as a 13.5-point favorite. Colorado beat them pretty badly last year too. If you remember, 49-24, they thumped them pretty hard. There's only one way for me to look at this game. Colorado on a letdown against big win against Iowa State. Utah, of course, coming off of a loss to BYU in a game where they really should have won. I know they have Cincinnati on deck, but I'm going to take Utah here, probably win by 20 points or so.
All right, so that's what we have for today's games, for this week's games. This was week 9 of college football. Don't forget, like I said, we don't know if we're going to do it every week, but this is your chance to try us out. We listen. We see it in the comments that you guys, it's like, hey, go and have to buy both. I'm choosing the wrong one. You get us both. DocSports.com/Craig Arun. That gets you all the football picks. That's 6 from my Indian Cowboy, including his top play. You get 8 from me, including my top 2 plays. So a total of 14 and 3 top plays included in there. You can't beat it. Just $99 at this link only. Don't forget also, we're going to have extra stuff, including parlays, props and stuff under the level 3. All you got to do is click the YouTube Premium. The link is in the description. $49.99. You get tons of extra stuff. It's about $2,500 worth of picks a month for just $50. And these are different than what our premium plays are. So do both. All right, guys, have a great day. We'll see you again next week.